has contacts. Why? This guy becomes ridiculously wealthy. What did he make his money selling in Hawaii? He made his money selling fruit. If you have ever bought a Dole pineapple, in fact, if you've ever bought a pineapple, pretty much it was probably a Dole pineapple. By the way, did you know they no longer grow pineapples in Hawaii? Because they grow them overseas cheaper. And so that is something that's brand new, because a few years ago you could go and tour like the pineapple farms, and as of in the last like 2 years they've shut them down. So it's kind of like sad. But the number one industry in Hawaii is tourism now. So, all right, so what's going to happen here? He starts an uprising. He contacts some people that he knows, and they send a battleship to Hawaii. He and the American League in Hawaii go, and they arrest the Queen. What do they arrest the Queen for? Well, because the Queen wants what? Hawaii for the natives. Hawaii for the Hawaiians. She said that she was not going to let these people come in and take it over. She said it should go to the Hawaiians. They're like, oh, that's cute that you think that. We don't think so. And so Sanford Dole manages to overthrow the Queen of Hawaii. I told you that they lock her up. They charge her with some things. And they have her to sign a paper that signs over Hawaii to the U.S. Congress tries to put this bill through. Who blocks it?
President, right?
Which president? Cleveland.
Yeah.
Cleveland blocks it. He just kind of smells a rat here. He's like, why is this lady who said Hawaii for the Hawaiians all of a sudden like, here, America, take it. And so Cleveland suspects something is wrong. He's like, yeah, we're not doing this. And then Dole's like, well, you know what? That's cool. We'll just make it an independent republic. And he does. He makes it an independent republic. And who is the leader of the independent republic in Hawaii? Cleveland. Very good. I'm sorry, not Cleveland. Dole. Dole makes himself the Hawaiian leader. Now, what eventually is going to happen to President Cleveland is he eventually is not going to be elected again. He goes out of office. And when he does, this is going to be reproposed in Congress. And in 1898, during the middle of the Spanish-American War, is when Hawaii officially becomes part of the U.S. Now, that was already in the works. It doesn't happen because of the Spanish-American War. Sometimes there are test questions that are like, you know, which of these did we gain from the Spanish-American War? This has nothing to do with that. It's just two things that happened at kind of the same time. That was decided a long time ago. Does that make sense? So Sarah and I have a conversation today. I could tell she's a little mad, and she decides to, she doesn't come to school tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, I made her mad. She stayed home. Well, she may have already had this doctor's appointment scheduled for like 6 months, right? So it's just two things that happen at the same time. That's what happens here. And then the next picture shows you Dole right here with his little beard. And he is handing over the keys of Hawaii. Now, can you tell what building that is? Actually, I didn't realize this until just now. That's the palace. Yeah, that's that archway that I showed you yesterday. Let's see. That's not it. The Eola Palace, yeah. It's the archway that's in the back. All right. Right. Yeah. So there you go. It's right in front of there. Why? Because if you're going to annex, you do it in front of the palace, right? Okay, so moving along from there. So that's how we got Hawaii. What's the year? 1898. When it comes to imperialism, the most important year is 1898. This is a year that several key things happen. One is we get Hawaii. Let's talk about the second. All right, let's go to Cuba. Cuba's an interesting little case study to me. It really is. So why does Cuba matter? Well, for one thing, Cuba is 90 miles off the coast of Florida. Now, talking about political cartoons always being propaganda, they always have a point of view. What's happening to old Uncle Sam?
That's a big boy.
Old Uncle Sam is a big boy. He had a lot of Thanksgiving dinner. Didn't he? So, Texas is part of that Thanksgiving dinner. Now, think about Uncle Sam's clothing. Uncle Sam's clothing represents the flag, right? Now, every time we get a state, we get a star. Used to, the stripes were added as well until eventually it got to where it just was kind of getting awkward. And so they went back to the original 13. But look at, he needs more room to grow because he's getting bigger, right? So they keep adding new stripes for it. And if you look, you see Texas there. I believe Puerto Rico's there, but it's spelled like Porto. It's like Puerto Rico. And what you see, if you look in the background at the fabric, you see rational expansion. You see foreign policy. And so you see all of this fabric that's being added to cover his additional girth. You know, if you get bigger, you got to have more fabric. It is what it is. The cruel irony of life. All right, so you definitely do something with this about how they're measuring Uncle Sam because they need to add more stripes or more stars. You need a new what? He does need a code. 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 Okay, I'll have to start it over to you. All right, let's see. Okay. All right, new code. Keep Caitlin happy. Good visit. He bought something this last one. All right, so let's go to Cuba. Like Gooding Jr., yeah. All right, so I want you to check out this political cartoon with me. There's a sentence on the bottom. Let me see if I can read it for you. And it says, the something of the issue. Worse fate. The duty of the issue to save her not only from Spain, but a worse fate. Now, who has control of Spain at this, or who does Spain have control of at this time that this would be? Give you a hint, we just said her name.
French.
No. Cuba! There we go.
I said Cuba for French.
All right, so check this out. This is supposed to be the island of Cuba. What is Cuba currently sitting in? A frying pan. Now, there is an old expression that my grandma used to use a lot, and it has to do with frying pans. And it's about people who always get themselves in trouble. You jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire. Now, do you know where that expression comes from? All right, so like, any of you eat frog legs, the frogs, things like that? Okay. Have you ever gigged frogs and caught frogs and take their legs off? Yeah. So, a little secret about boiling frogs. This is going to sound really cruel, but this is true. Kind of gross. But you do, if you're doing a whole frog, you do it alive. I've never actually cooked frogs myself. But why couldn't you just take this big bullfrog? I've got my hot pan. It is boiling, boiling, boiling. I throw him in. What's going to happen? He's going to jump out. He's a semi-aquatic animal. He can exist on land and on water. But 3 steps ahead over here, if I put him in just some nice lukewarm water, he's like, oh, it's back water. Lay him back, all good. And you slowly turn up the heat, you'll cook him right up. That is 100% true.
Oh, we could.
Now, think about that a little bit for a minute. And there's some truth to that. A lot of times, as long as things are gradual, we don't even notice what's happening to us.
Yeah, I heard that if you put your hand in a pot of water and then you let it boil, then
If you do it slowly. The same thing. Why? Because we don't notice. We don't notice gradual change. I think a lot of times with the government, I wonder sometimes, you have people that start freaking out. I wonder sometimes if maybe we're missing gradual changes. I don't know. All right. So check this out here. So here you have little Cuba, and she's in that frying pan. And if she freaks out and jumps out, it's not any better for her than if she stays in the frying pan, right? Basically, that's her situation. She's going to lose here. And so the duty here, our responsibility here, is to keep her from both Spain and from a worse fate. And the worst fate here is herself. So are they showing Cuba as a mature country? No,
It's not.
because she's not. If she jumps out, they say she's going to fall into anarchy. Now, I want you to think about this with me. It's kind of interesting. It's funny to me how, even with him and my little boy, how independent he can be on some things and how he's like, I can do this. And I'm like, no, you really can't. Like, he's convinced he'll say, why won't you let me drive? Well, this is like in our recent, I'm like, well, you're not 5 yet, so it's just kind of a thing. You've been at least not even in double digits, But a lot of times we think we can handle things that we can't. But then again, how condescending is it to talk about another nation being that way? That's kind of, weren't we the same way? We jumped out of the frying pan and into the fire, and we made it. So, and we didn't want anybody telling us how to do it, right? And so to say that they can't, you could write a point of view about this, couldn't you? All right, so keep this in mind. Keep this in mind. All right, so let's go to, I'm going to come back to that in just a second. Let's start with your outline by talking about, what's it, yellow journalism? Yes. All right, so here's the situation in Cuba. Cuba has been under the control for Spain for as long as we've been talking in this class. In fact, Columbus went to Cuba in the 1490s. It wasn't on trip 1, but I think trip 2, he was hitting up Havana. So Spain and Cuba have this long history where Spain has been in control. So what happens by the 1890s is a lot of other nations are starting to gain their freedom, right? From places that have controlled them. And so nations like Cuba are starting to question, why are we still under the control of the Spanish? Now, in Cuba, the number one product at that time, like Hawaii, was what? Sugar. The fruit's important, but the sugar. What tariff is passed? The McKinley tariff, the same one that messes up Hawaii, right? That McKinley tariff. Now, if the price of something goes up, do we buy more or less? Less. Unless there's inelastic, for those of you that have taken economics, you covered inelastic demand, which means you're going to have to buy gas, you're going to have to buy milk. I mean, you can run around a little less, but this is not an inelastic demand. You can substitute sugar. Not the most fun thing, but you can. Or you could buy American-made sugar, which was a little cheaper than with this new tax hike. So here we are. We're buying this sugar. We quit buying as much sugar because we were the number one people who bought sugar from Cuba. Why? We're 90 miles off the coast of Cuba, or they're 90 miles from us, right? So it makes sense. We're the closest country to them other than the little islands, and we're much bigger than the islands. So if the Americans stop buying, what do the businesses have to do there? I mean, the tariff's high. They have to cut costs, right? Now, Mary, where did you work, baby? I remember you worked, but I don't remember which restaurant.
Burger King.
Burger King. So if nobody's coming to Burger King, your boss is going to start cutting hours. Right?
Our business slow, so I mean,
So they start cutting hours.
hours be slow.
Yeah. But then if it picks up,
Yeah.
You have to start bringing more people in. I remember the first job I worked, and I mentioned this to you guys, I believe the other day. The first job I worked that was outside of with my family, I would get so mad. My boss, like during the Christmas season and stuff, I would get so many hours I couldn't stand it because it was retail. And then after Christmas, she's like, "Oh, well, I'm not going to need you this week." I'm like, she is so cheap. No, she wasn't. She didn't need to pay another person to sit there in the store to have anybody in it. You know, it just was the truth of it. The economics, she was correct. So here you have, in Cuba, they're not selling as much sugar, so they start laying off workers. You don't need to produce more if you can't sell what you have. They start cutting hours. They start cutting pay. Well, when that happens, you know, Marriott probably doesn't go, "I'm so mad at people at Pascagoula for not coming to eat tonight. I don't know what's wrong with my boss. I didn't need to be sent home early. I needed those hours, you know." And so we get mad at that direct person, right? Because that's the person we see. That's the face of our problem. And so the Cubans got mad at the Spanish because they're the ones who aren't paying them as much money. They're the ones who are cutting the jobs. Of course, they're doing it all because of this tariff. So eventually, the Cubans are going to get mad enough that they declare rebellion. They start to fight against the Spanish. Now, when you start to fight against a superior country, a stronger country, generally they don't just say, "Okay, stop it." No, generally they get involved, and that's what's going to happen here. So they're going to send in a general. Okay. All right, so they're going to send in a general. And the general's name is Valeriano Byler. Valeriano Byler. Now, don't pay attention to the pictures yet. So we're going to come back to them. Valeriano Byler's job was to stop the Cubans from revolting. So he put them into concentration camps. Now, when you hear concentration camps, these are the kind of pictures you expect to see, right? That's because the Nazis forever ruined the term concentration camps. What he really puts them into by today's standards would be prison camps. They're not being starved. They're not being tortured. They're being imprisoned. Now, I'm not saying they should be in prison, but we're going to come back to these pictures because the pictures tell a different story, don't they? Mm-hmm. That looks like Nazi-level concentration camps. It does. All right. So, what's going to happen because of Wyler? So Wyler comes in, and we start to hear extreme stories of cruelty. Why? Because of these guys. There are two terms that I want to make sure that you learn here. And the first is yellow journalism. What does the term yellow journalism mean? Is it truthful? Just the facts? Great. Hey. I don't think your phone's working. I tried to call you several times today, so it's okay. Yeah. Drinks or I can do that. So what should I put there? Tell me. No, I'm not going to get up. Oh, I just used an old PO. No, that's my fault. It doesn't matter what I bring in. What if I put fruit drinks? Okay. Okay. Oh, we did laminate for that. T. Should I just put more orange juices? Okay, deal. I'll do it right now. Thank you. Bye. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my stuff together for judges. There's all these rules we have to have. Okay. So anyway, yellow journalism is where you lie or exaggerate to sell newspapers. All right, you lie or exaggerate to sell newspapers. Okay, so looking at what that means here. The other term is going to be jingoism. Jingoism. Jingoism is basically a slogan. A slogan. What do I mean by a slogan? Well, like just an expression that you use for the purpose of saying something like American blood shed on American soil. Remember the Maine and to hell with Spain. Anything that becomes kind of a slogan. All right. So
We got a dog in the hallway.
do we have a real dog?
I sound like a real dog.
Who let the dog out? That's the question.
They doing drug searches. Dog.
Well, that's a stray dog. They got rabies.
Yes, there is a random stray dog because everybody else has to be buzzed in, but they let the
There
dog.
were dogs at the school last year.
Yeah.
I remember that. They got in. Yes.
I mean, somebody had to let him in there.
The door was open because it was the beginning of the school day. When
Like,
you-
don't touch them, they might bite you and get rabies. They were little.
That's such a Mr. Hughes statement, though. Like, I can see Mr. Hughes like,
We were all
stare
still
at the dog.
petting them anyway.
They were cute. They were like this
We should let the dog in the
little
bedroom.
pickles. And they were like,
God.
All right, it probably is. Okay, so jingoism has to do with like slogans. Like, what's Nike's jingo?
Just
All
do it.
right, we got the idea. Ba-da-da-da-da.
I love McDonald's.
That's
McDonald's, yeah.
McDonald's.
I'm loving it. Exactly.
I'm
So
not
you
loving
got the idea. That's a jingo. Okay? Another similar word is a jingle. That's all it is it's a slogan. All right? So slogans help us remember things. I used 4 notes, and you immediately knew what place I was talking about. That was it.
Arby's.
All right. So here we go. Let's talk about Pulitzer and Hearst. They are the 2 famous yellow journalists at this time. What catches our attention in the news? Propaganda, the bad stuff. Nobody like, oh, yeah. All right, let's think about it like this. So there's an article that was going around social media about this grandma that she messaged her grandson about what time to come for Thanksgiving dinner, and she actually messaged the wrong guy.
They've been doing it for like 5 years.
And yeah, they've been doing this for like 5 years. So you see that story, you're bored, you might read it.
Yeah.
But then below it, you see where this guy stabbed a terrorist with a narwhal horn.
sir.
You're going to the terrorist. You're not real worried about grandma. Yes.
Or-
Yes.
I thought those were real.
Yes, narwhals are real.
I thought the same thing.
I mean, like, aren't they like unicorns? No.
I thought they were like unicorns too.
I will be honest with you, it was quite a while before I realized a narwhal was a real thing. I thought it was like something fictitious. Do what? So check this out. In the palace in Hawaii, speaking of narwhals, it's the first time I've ever seen a narwhal horn, like in person. I still kind of wonder myself a little bit. It's N-A.
Are you sure?
I think because I spelled it wrong the other day. I thought it was N-O, but it's N-A-R-W-A-L. All right, so see if it can show it.
It's like Canadian.
So- Inside the throne room, right here. See that big piece right there that sticks up? That's a narwhal horn.
That's long. And they used
Yes, it's like 9 feet long.
Somebody got hit.
And they're the weirdest looking creatures. I really believe somebody's photoshopping these things. I'm like,
No.
Look at that dude. He got arrested.
I mean, Like they kind of do look like somebody photoshopped it, right?
Looks like Prince teeth.
That's true.
It kind of like
It's like the ultimate sword
It's
fight.
so
It's not
wild,
that long,
just
right?
with the horn.
It's like 20 feet.
It's
I think it's
crazy.
a bird.
Well, look at those now. They don't look that long when you're just looking at them.
Sharp. That thing looks
But I can tell you this one right here, this one was probably about 7 feet long.
I like the sword.
And then the one in the terrorist attack,
So they basically
that cat is American.
look at this guy.
Now let's watch the
A
video.
Polish British
First of all,
American.
why does he have a narwhal tail?
Okay, so he was this Polish guy in a pub on London Bridge, and he sees the terrorist guy like walking around with the bombs on him, terrorist, and he goes and he gets the narwhal horn off the wall of the pub and like chases the guy down with it.
Oh, look, look at my beard, and I'm gonna chase this guy.
Like you cannot
Hold
be.
my beer.
He had to be a Polish redneck. There is no doubt. Like I agree. He was like, "Hold my beer, Bob. Here I go," and he goes and gets the narwhal horn. There is nothing more like,
Hurry.
yeah.
Have a narwhal horn. This
That
is
is-
the-
I mean, why not, right? You know, poor narwhal. There's some poor narwhal out there going around trying to horn stuff, just not working for it. I'm sure
I think
they
they
probably
die.
whale them, kind of like they do whales,
I think
and
they
probably
died.
keep it warm. You what? Well, do you know elephants actually don't always die when if they take the tusk without killing them? But it's normally they do. Anyway, so yeah, I'm kind of infatuated with these a little bit because they just seem unreal.
That's wild. Like,
Really is.
I bet the tusk is longer, is like the size of the body. It's like
I'm sure it's proportionate in some way, but
Look
they're
at English
like
to
that one at
Polish,
the palace.
right?
It shocked me how big it was. Like I thought saw it being like 4 feet, and like I'm standing there, I'm like that chair is taller than I am, and it's taller than this chair. So, all right. So anyway, let's come back to yellow journalism. Sensationalized stories catch our attention, right? The bigger the story, like honestly, I clicked on that. Like, what's the catch? If you see the story about sweet grandma who invites this little guy who doesn't have a family to 4 or 5 Thanksgivings or 4 Thanksgivings, I think this was 5. So this is Thanksgiving 5. Or you see beyond below it, Beyonce runs over small child. Click, 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 click.
Oh my god. I like that.
Get ready.
Right? Because
Just
the
jinxed
bigger the
Beyonce.
story, the bigger the story. Beyonce trumps grandma. Now, let's talk about these two guys. Let me read this quote to you. Look at the children in this political cartoon. It's supposed to be these 2 men. And they're playing with building blocks. And they're building what word? Word. Now, the cartoon, it says below it, this is a quote by William Randolph Hearst. You furnish the pictures, and I'll furnish the war. Does he say, give me the stories? No. He says, give me pictures. Do pictures always tell the truth? Not really. Sometimes a picture tells the story we want it to tell. I have a good friend that her wedding pictures, we get so tickled at it because the way the photographer took the picture, the only picture he has of Jake by himself, which is her husband. My husband's a really good friend. Jake's kind of propped up like this, and the angle of the photo is directly in front of Jake, and it makes it look like Jake is paraplegic. Means he's missing a leg, or not paraplegic, I'm sorry, he's an amputee. He looks like he has absolutely no leg whatsoever. The way it just is angled, it looks like he is just standing there balancing perfectly. Yes, he's like a flamingo.
Yeah.
Without the bottom, he just looks like he's like this. Another one of my former students, I saw where she had, in your book, we always talked about being careful how you make pictures because sometimes it'll make it look like somebody's, you don't take them exactly right, like they're missing a body part or whatever. And there was this particular one of my students, and she said it to me. She's like, look at this picture. Because the way she's leaning over, she kind of had her leg propped, and it looks like she has no leg on the bottom. Just the way the picture's made. Now, you furnish the what? Pictures. So let's look at these pictures now. These are pictures. These are real people. But if you looked at these, knowing this was about a guy named Valeriano Weiler, who was nicknamed the Butcher, and that he put people in concentration camps, you could write the story yourself, couldn't you? But guess what? It's totally untrue. He did do those things, but not these things. So the first picture are 3 children. So what are they doing to 3 kids? They stripped down 3 kids naked. What are they going to do to these kids? These kids were dumpster children. That means they were orphans. They had been abandoned or their parents had died. And the Spanish are there. They're trying to conquer the rebels, and they find these starving children in the dumpster. And they bring them back for medical treatment. They have scabies. That's why they take their clothes off, is they're trying to get them clean and get them in clean clothes and sanitize them. And so when you see the picture with that lens, you see that lady that's there, looks like maybe helping him get changed. It's a totally different picture, isn't it? But when you see the word concentration and you see those pieces of wood behind it, it looks like a prison. First time I saw this picture, I thought they were locked up in a prison, naked. And then you go to picture number 2. I mean, this is like textbook Auschwitz, right? Like I could put this picture in the middle of our World War II presentation and you're like, AKA Hitler, I mean, it just kind of, what this is. Actually, this was a man who they found. He had gotten stranded in a place where he was stuck in the mud. It was actually in a sinkhole, and he could not get out. And when they found him, he was already probably very thin. He's obviously emaciated. Looks like he's about to die. And so they also bring him back for medical care. But that doesn't sell newspapers, does it? What sells newspaper is scandal. I get notifications to my phone. I don't even remember when I signed up for these, but I get news from both CNN and Fox every day. They hit my phone. And sometimes, usually I just want to see like if there's any big, huge headlines or whatever. But sometimes it'll be something that I'm like, kind of like the one with the guy attacks terrorist with the narwhal horn. I'm like, whoa, and you start clicking, right? The same thing with newspapers. You walk by, I promise you, if this was before the era of the click, if I walked by and I saw a newspaper that says London terrorist attacked with narwhal horn, I would be like, I will drop that quarter. And these guys make money with those sensationalized stories. Grandma, 5 Thanksgiving dinners, okay, I know enough now. I don't have to drop that quarter. But I want to know about that narwhal horn. I didn't even think those were real. And that's what catches our attention. And so it is profitable for these men to antagonize the people. Now think about that with media today. Viewers get sponsors, doesn't it? I have a hard time watching most of our news outlets right now. Because whichever you watch, whichever side of the coin that you flip to, they are so trying to make you afraid. Like I watch it and I find myself just like this, watching some of those media shows. And I hate that. I don't feel like I can watch the news without going, oh. All right, so let's talk about people give them stuff to work with sometimes. Let's start with DeLone. February 7th, 1898. Remember, that's the magic year, right? This guy is the Spanish ambassador to the U.S. He writes a letter. Now, back in maybe middle school, some of you probably used to write and pass notes. And perhaps every so often, maybe like in your 7th grade social studies class, you have one that somehow ends up in the hands of your teacher who likes to read them out loud in class.
Miss Campbell.
And like you were just absolutely devastated, right? Why? Because that was not meant for everybody else. General life lesson, never write or type anything that you don't want public. Because somebody has it. And they can modify what they've said and always make you look like the bad guy.
That's so true.
It is so true. That is, if I leave you with nothing else, never make anything public that you don't want to be turned into a meme and shown to the world.
Ricardo be like,
Because you think about like some of these memes and things that circulate over and over and over again.
like the gnome.
Yeah, any of those. Those people a lot of times are known for one stupid moment. You're defined by that. But anyway, my favorite, have you guys ever seen the kid Curtis in the wife swap book where he's like, bacon, I want my chicken nuggets. Why did I have? I should have known that
I
we
saw
would have
that
that.
boy on Pawn Stars.
Yes, I never get tired of that one. By the way, I never can watch. Like every time I watch it, I'm just like, I feel good about myself again. I told that lady that she thinks she's special and that we're the dumb people. I want my bacon. It's good for you. King Curtis. King Curtis. Yes. You've never seen King Curtis. Go home. You'll thank me later. All right. We may have second at the end. So anyway, here's what happens. He writes a letter in which he criticizes McKinley to a friend of his. He says McKinley's weak. He says that McKinley is a politician who wants people to like him, which is true. Very, very much so. In fact, he does stuff like, it says he leaves a door behind himself while keeping on good terms with the jingos of his party. So if this is one side and this is another side, if I were McKinley, you would all think I was with you. And you would all think I was with you. He plays both sides. I can respect a politician that I don't like who tells the truth, more than I can respect somebody who makes me feel good about them, but they're going to lie to me. That I don't have a lot of respect for, you know. Own it, right? Oh, yeah, this is how I feel. And at least that way I know. Yes. All right. So, let's look at. So, this letter gets published by Pulitzer. This letter.
Is that where the, what's called the, is that where the
Pulitzer Prize is named after Pulitzer. The Pulitzer Prize is for like the most news-breaking story of the year. Of course, the funny thing here is their news was exaggerated, but the Pulitzer photo is the most shocking photo of the year. That's exactly where it comes from. All right, so DeLone, this letter gets published. He never intended that. It's that 7th grade love letter that ended up on the floor, and everybody knows about it. And this guy is talking about our president in our house. This is like somebody coming in your house and talking about your family. You know, you do a lot of things, but you don't, you know, that's when you start talking about my people. I talk about my people. You don't talk about my people because I haven't cut anybody in a long time. There's always a new candidate.
Okay.
Whoa. All right. So let's talk about 1 week later. 1 week later, February 15th. February 15th. We sent a U.S. battleship, the Maine, to park in Havana Harbor with one purpose, a goodwill mission, right? Because I send battleships places just to let people know I care, right? True. And we're going to send a police car to park in your front yard just so you know we love you. You know, and so we send it to Cuba. Well, I kind of like showing the Spanish, hey, look at us. We have a steel battleship. You got wooden ships. How's that feel? And so we park our battleship in there, and it's just kind of floating along, hanging out in the harbor, and all of a sudden, boom, it blows up on the 15th. My battleship blows up, and I'm mad at you. Who am I blaming? You know when you already don't like somebody, if anything goes wrong, it's their fault. Like, it makes me think of the, when Obama was president, you had the Thanks Obama videos, like these people who are like, my car won't start, thanks Obama, you know, and all these things that went wrong. It's kind of like that. So we're already mad at the Spanish. Thanks, Spain, it's your fault. But it kind of looks like it is, right? They're mad at us, we're mad at them, our ship blows up, right where they're located. You can apply the scientific method here and get totally the wrong answer. We didn't really study it. We just kind of assumed they blew it up. And you start having slogans published in the newspaper. Remember jingoism? This one is the one that I think you will find the easiest to remember. Remember the Maine and to hell with Spain. Now, I particularly emphasize this one because students mix up the Maine and the Lusitania. It's not remember the Maine, or it's not remember the Lusitania because of España. You know, that doesn't work. It's remember the Maine and to hell with Spain. The Lusitania is World War I. So what happens is it's a fire in the coal room that actually hits explosives and it causes the ship to blow up. Technically, we blew up our own ship. Men,
Hello.
come in. Maybe not. Remember the Maine. That was Maine. Now, in this picture, you see where the Cubans are like, yeah, it could have very well been the Spanish. Of course, they don't know. They don't know who blew up the ship. You know? Yes, this guy's supposed to look like a savage, and on his waistband it says Spain. And on the tombstone it says like the murdered sailors of the Maine, something along those lines. And so it's showing him to look like just this animal. And so Spain is just this animal that killed our people who were just hanging out in the harbor. Of course, we have them there in case war is declared, right? It's not all in innocence. So what happens after this? The president gives Spain an ultimatum. An ultimatum is you do it my way or we're about to dance. And here is that ultimatum. ULTI, MATUM, I believe. Let me check my. I think. Yes, ULTIMATUM. Yeah, an ultimatum. First, immediately stop war with the Cubans. Give them their independence and close down the camps. They were like, if you don't stop what you're doing, it's war. What do you, what? You know, you would think they would, but you know what they actually said? They're like, all right, we'll do it. Yes.
What is that after giving their
Close down the camps. So we tell them, make Cuba independent. And they're like, okay. Now, what do? We declare war anyway because we said, oh, they're not going to do it. Let's go to war. So why does Congress do that? Because McKinley requested war. Why did McKinley request war? Because the people wanted war. So he's like, I'm going to give you this ultimatum. He thinks they're going to say no. And you know how like you're like, you better say it. And you're like, yes. You're like, oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I've learned in anytime you have an argument with somebody that somebody's just being belligerent, they're like, I'm so mad at you and blah, blah, blah. And they're just waiting for you to yell back. And you're like, I'm really sorry. Yeah, you are. I mean, you know, what can they say? You should be. I am. Okay. And so this just, well, we're pretending that I say that. But anyway, I'm not that passive all the time. Yeah. But it is amazing though, sometimes when you're wrong, the best thing is just to not be stubborn and admit you're. And Spain says, they're like, you know what, we don't want to fight. Cool, war over. Now, what should we have done here? I guess we could have said, all right, you know what? You say you're going to do it, we're giving you a month. Get out. And then if they didn't, then go to work. But McKinley, he's a bidder for the crowd. He's a politician, right? The people are like, war, war, war. And he's like, you know what? You're not going to do it. War. And he asks Congress, and Congress declares it. We were going to get everything we want, we think. And they didn't do it. But people don't like when things come in, obviously. So it makes you popular if it's quick, and it's going to be. So war is officially declared. So we will pick up tomorrow talking about
Will you send me the recording from yesterday?
Yes, and it's not the whole thing, but it's most of it.
Will you send it to me too?
Mm-hmm.
Me too.